All right, here we go, guys. Happy Friday. It is now December 20th. Want you to think about that for a minute. 11 days left before the close of 2019 and the start of a new decade, the start of 2020. But between now and then, plenty of college basketball to be able to cover, including a light card here tonight, but a really great weekend ahead of us here in college hoops. Sitting alongside Ralph Michaels at CalSportsLV, WagerTalk.com. That is what the Happy Hour Tip-Off Show, powered by our friends at WagerTalk.com. Make sure that you get there today. Plenty of opportunities for you to be able to profit all weekend long with Ralph there at WagerTalk.com. All you have to do is get to his page there, go to the Cal Sports page on the handicappers, and he's got you all set. And, Ralph, we got some games to talk about here on Saturday. We'll talk about some of the games, a couple of the marquee matchups coming up from tomorrow, because it is a light card, not a whole lot of crazy action going on today. But there was some fun stuff going on yesterday, Ralph. Some interesting games, a few upsets last night, in fact.
Well, you're looking at the top of the upsets, Joe. You have to remember, we talked about Seton Hall and maybe not losing some of their offense. Well, yeah, they didn't score nearly what we thought, but when kids get hurt, when a guy like Powell gets hurt and he's your superstar, it's the next man up. We see the same thing in the NFL. Mm-hmm. You tend to get a spirited effort from the other kids, and that happens a lot of times, like an injury system in the NFL. When a quarterback gets hurt, I won't play against an injured star the first game. I think they normally get a bounce back, and I look to play against them in the second game, especially in their next game when they're away from home. So we're going to have some opportunity. Paul's going to be out a little while here, a few games, I believe. So Seton Hall with a big win, and Maryland, one of the top teams in the country now, back-to-back State and Seton Hall.
Yep, and one of those situations, guys. Maryland on the road, all of a sudden, not good. Very young team there, though, so they'll have to put it together. Jackson State, Portland. This was another interesting one, Ralph, that we were on. Jackson State was getting 6.5 at some point yesterday, and it started to come down a little bit, but yeah, they pulled it through, 73-63. I don't know why aren't people talking about them, Ralph? Pretty good program.
Well, yeah, you look at them and, they're 3-8 and their wins aren't good, but, they had some close losses. And, to me, they're a bottom rung team, but,
that'll bite you in the ass.
You pull the upset. There's nothing when you have a coach who's been there for years, like Wayne Bryant, like Wayne Brent has. And, again, they're only 3-8. This is their first win against a D1 opponent. So they're a team that's going to sneak under the radar, get beat up, and we'll see what happens when they get into their conference play.
And more or less get overlooked, I think, which is what happened there in that game, Ralph. So you said 8 upsets by at least 2.5 points or more. So on a big card like that, Ralph, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and it wasn't a huge card. It wasn't like a normal Wednesday or a Saturday card. So a lot of small ones. You see the biggest upset was that 7-point line. Yeah. That was a game that moved from Seton Hall throughout the day. It was even less than that early. So, are those really upsets, those 3-point dogs? Well, for our record-keeping purposes, they are. So, right. It's also of note to know how many wins. So perhaps you're thinking about maybe playing some or splitting a bet, +3, +4, +5, splitting a bet between taking the dog or perhaps betting some of it on the money line.
Yeah, also some of the bigger covers there last night. Troy, Coastal Carolina, I don't know what the hell that was, 77-59. Line was 4.5, covered by 22.5 there, Ralph, as well as Hofstra, too. Hofstra, Princeton, I don't think has won a game at home yet, Ralph. Interesting tidbit of information there. 18 was the cover. That line was 3, and really Hofstra led kind of wire to wire in that one.
Yeah, I mean, it was a 15-point easy win, and Princeton now 3-8. You're right. The wins all the way from home. Iona and Fairleigh Dickinson and one more. I think Bucknell earlier in the year, but they're a team that I think you're still paying a premium. It's Princeton. People know Princeton, and people know that name. And they were 16-12 last year. And at one point last year, remember, they were 16-8 before they went and lost their last 4 games. So you're still paying that price, like we talked about with Kentucky, like perhaps we'll talk about with North Carolina and with Princeton. When you get those teams down a notch or two, there's some value playing against them.
Some monster games there, too, for the over. 42.5 points. Is that correct? 102.99? Is that that was a – how many times they played a game there, Ralph?
Well, you know, that's the Citadel. Now, it was 3 overtimes,
right.
So I neglected to put that in there. But let's see here. They scored 16-27. It was 85s. It was still 170.
Still way over. Yep.
After, so again, you're looking at a total of 158. So you know, Citadel always a top 10 or 20 team as far as tempo goes. They're just happy to go down and toss up threes.
Yep. Also, I thought this would be a little bit more high scoring, the Detroit game, Ralph, Northeastern there. Northeastern was the better team, should have won that game. They did, but I thought they'd get, they were 13 points under. I thought we'd see a little bit more high scoring from them, considering how up-tempo they are.
Well, Northeastern this year, it hasn't been, Joe. I mean, Northeastern now has a tempo of almost 300.
Oh,
so they've changed things where they've slowed down the tempo. Detroit clearly much more of an up-tempo team, but Northeastern this year has really changed the character of their games, much different than some seasons in the past.
Yep. So those were guys, couple of big upsets there, and of course some games that went. Clearly, the cover was there, clearly over, clearly under. We like to cover those for you, as well as take a look at some of the top performers of the day on some of these teams here, Ralph. And there were some big numbers being put up in some of these games.
Yeah, I like the steals and the blocks. So when you have Justin Forrest and you look and he has 32, 4, 4, 6, and 4. That to me is just, is an incredible performance.
He was a one-man wrecking crew. I mean, I really thought South Alabama was the better team. I thought they'd have a better showing, especially at home. But nope, not at all. He took over the game.
Yeah, really, those teams are basically about the same level of competition, both of those teams in that range. But, you have a guy that has that type of day, then it makes all the difference in the world. And, you look at a 10-assist guy, well, we know Citadel went into those 3 overtimes, so those numbers are a little tweaked, getting to play the extra 15 minutes. But, you still don't see double-digit assists very often in college basketball.
Yes, it is. It is a little bit. Some of these names here, Ralph, we have not seen before, but the kid from Hofstra, certainly Eli Pemberton, 27, 4, 5, 2, and 3, kind of an all-around game over there. Well done on the road at Princeton to be able to get the job done for Hofstra, who's quietly put up 8 wins this year.
Yeah, and the thing about Pemberton is, if you ask who the best offensive player is, very well may get Desiree Blue answered more than him. So, it's a team where you're going to pay attention to, do they have any good wins? Well, the Princeton win wasn't good. They beat UCLA earlier this year, but, UCLA middle of the road. Losses to Bonaventure, San Diego, Bucknell, a bad loss to San Jose early, but they're a 20-win team with multiple scores. So, as they continue to play on in the Colonial Conference, you're going to see Hofstra up there quite a bit.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, we'll usually do some trends and angles for you guys on the day. But I don't know if you had anything that stuck out to you today on this light card, Ralph. If not, we can certainly take a look at the market and get to some of these primetime games tomorrow.
Joe, I do. Trends and angles. You could always find something with the limited cards. So, Illinois 10-1 against the spread off back-to-back straight-up losses. So they're a team that hasn't had long losing streaks. And Quinnipiac, 15-3 against the spread on the road versus teams with losing records. So they're one of those teams that does go on the road, can win, can beat foes. Penn State, couple total trends here. Penn State now 1-12 over-under as a favorite of 10 or more points. And when you're handicapping college teams, I think it is very important to know whether the team is the favorite or the dog, because more often than not, the better team can help control the pace. So you have Penn State when they're a big favorite of 10 or more. They control the pace. It's a slower pace. Their defense is dominant, and it goes under the total. And Fordham, again, not many teams more of an under team than Fordham. They are 0-9 over-under at home, and they're 2-13 over-under their last 15 games.
Interesting. All right, taking on James Madison here tonight at 7 o'clock. 137 is the total in that game. Laying 3 there is what Fordham is doing. And there are a couple of games on the board here, Ralph, tonight, taking a look at the market that are clearly there is more interest in a few of these games than others. And I don't think you have to look much further than our friends, the Anteaters there. Cal Irvine taking on Illinois Chicago, 8 p.m. tonight here, Ralph. And Cal Irvine, a lot of people think that that devastating loss there by Illinois Chicago, kind of tough for them to be able to get up and go against Cal. Opened up at 3. They are now a 5-point favorite. The total is coming down a little, which is interesting because Cal Irvine, we've talked about it, not exactly the same defensive slow-paced juggernaut that they were last year.
Yeah, you're now 7-6, and one good thing is, well, you only have one bad loss. You lost to Detroit, but you're talking a fourth game in 6 days. So in 7 days, they played last Monday, Tuesday, and UTEP. We talked about him getting by against Kent State, and then I played against him against UTEP, cashed a ticket with UTEP beating him in that second game of the tournament. So you spent Sunday, Monday, Tuesday in El Paso, and now you're across country to Illinois. So 4 games in 7 days is something you have to keep into your mix when you're handicapping.
Team that we have talked about a lot here, Ralph. It's interesting, Delaware, that we have told you sneakily, we're talking a powerhouse here of sorts there, certainly for their for the size of their school and what they've got going on. Delaware, another great season, taking on LIU Brooklyn, but some people anticipated they might be a bigger favorite in this. They're not. They're only about 1.5 points, Ralph. 2 points at best, and the total seems to be hovering right around that 154 mark. Delaware might have their hands full here tonight with LIU Brooklyn.
Yeah, Martin Inglesby is their head coach, and you look at what he's done there. When I have a head coach, all you can ask for is improvement. He took over in 2017. They went 13-20, then 14-19, then 17-16. And now he has them at 10-2 with losses only to George Washington and Villanova. And, the Villanova loss was only by 8 points last week. So, Joe, and think about what could have been, because we talked about a Delaware transfer yesterday at the top of the scoring list. And, there's times when you say, wow, this team's 10-2 and, this guy transferred away. Imagine if he stayed. But, that happens with every college program, that kids transfer and you get transfers in. So it's just part of the game. But, Delaware looks to be, that 10-2 going through a tough Colonial Conference. Yep. They're a team that can get to 20 wins. They're not going to make the NCAA tournament because I still think Hofstra and Northeastern and Charleston are better in the Colonial. But they're a team that can make some noise and perhaps an NIT, CIT, CBI, ABC, DEF, GEA, one of those tournaments later on in the year that they'll be able to. Yeah.
Yep, I'd like to buy a vowel there, Ralph. And I got to ask you on the board here tonight, Mississippi Valley State taking on Santa Clara. Should I just check the over box here, Ralph? What should we do here? Because usually Mississippi Valley State don't have any problem getting points on them or scoring. You know, they tend to, most of the teams they play go over by themselves. So what do you think here, Santa Clara, Mississippi Valley State?
Well, for years, Chicago State was the worst team in Division I. And just a refresher for those watching, there are 353 teams in Division I. Right. Mississippi State is 1-10. Their win is against North American, an NAIA team. Yeah. And, okay, let's remember that number again, 353. Mm-hmm. Their Ken Palm adjusted offensive efficiency, 351. Their defense, 348.
Those are some good. I don't know that the number is big enough then. They're laying 26, and somebody's playing them because it opened up at 27.5, Ralph. I'm seeing it down at 25.5.
Well, you know, Santa Clara, this is a team, you know, they're 11-2. Their losses are to Stanford, who only has one loss.
Right.
And they lost on the road to Nevada. So you don't have anything to look forward to. You're playing Alcorn State. If you're Santa Clara, you're playing Alcorn State next Sunday. So you have 9 days off. So it's not like you don't have this game circled. And, you know, teams are number 1 paced against Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. Santa Clara currently number 26 as far as tempo goes. So Santa Clara gets to 100. And what was the line, Joe?
155. They're 25.5 favorites.
So 75. Can Mississippi State Valley get to 75? Well, they're high. Oh, they did put up 81 against Western Michigan. They put up 78 against Central Michigan. Mm-hmm. Oh, but in that Central Michigan game that they put up 78,
right?
They allowed 134.
And that wasn't triple overtime. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, you don't win by 66 in triple overtime, Joe.
I love it. Absolutely love it. So, interesting games here tonight, guys. Some of those teams in between the mix here. But I'll tell you this, I am looking for Vermont to kind of step it up here after losing there against Greensboro a couple of nights ago, Ralph. Taking on Lipscomb at home here. It's 10, I think, 10.5 right now, around that number. I want the Catamats. I'm hoping them to bounce back here tonight in this spot.
Yeah, they're another one. Again, now's the Christmas break, so, you know, what do they have to look forward to? Do they have a game on deck this weekend? No, their next game is not the New Year's Eve, December 31st. So you have 11 days off. You're off your only home loss. You're 7-5. I tell you what, I agree with you that it's a powerful motivator going into an 11-day break over Christmas, and you're either 8-5 and you won your last game, or you're 7-6 and you're off back-to-back home losses.
Yeah, so it's a big game for them, that is for sure. Instead of focusing on some dogs here, guys, tonight we're just going to shoot right over to our games tomorrow that we are going to highlight, because it is a good card tomorrow, Saturday. And one of the games we want to take a look at, Ralph, how about Kansas and Villanova in this matchup here? Kansas, right at the top there, guys. You're looking at one of the best teams in the country there. Villanova still trying to figure out their identity at this point. Ralph, what do you think of this game?
Well, I'm going to talk from a perspective, Joe.
Okay.
I expect Kansas to be about a 3-point favorite. Mm-hmm. And, while Villanova, we've talked about, was a very young team, we saw them go on the road, struggle against Ohio State when they had one of their guards missing. I guess you have to think, well, Kansas has that number 1 jinx, because once you get the number 1 AP ranking this year, you go down and lose. Mm-hmm. But I'm gonna stick to my guns, and something that I've talked about all along. This is their first true road game. And this Kansas has, yes, you played in a tournament against Duke and you lost. And yes, you went to, Maui and you played in that tournament and you beat some foes. And, but you still struggled against Dayton. You went into overtime, and you really haven't played. Dayton, Duke, a top-ranked team you lost to. Dayton, the next best team you played, you went to overtime. Villanova, now the next best played. If I can get Villanova, anything, I think the line's going to be 3. If people fade Villanova, and because Kansas is number 1 and it gets to 4 or more, I might be on the Wildcats as a home dog.
Yeah, liking the Wildcats here as a possible home dog. I don't disagree. It's that whole first, especially early on in the season, right? That whole first road game, true road game, always a bit of a head scratcher. And Villanova, well coached. They got some kids there that can play. It'll be interesting to see exactly how that game plays out. And I'm trying to see here if the line. Did they post? I want to see if they posted any updated numbers on it as of yet. No, they haven't. So that's going to be a game tomorrow, guys, I believe at early in the afternoon, 2 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow there, Kansas, Villanova. And the other game, Ralph, that you got circled here for tomorrow, looks like Butler and Purdue. And some people scratching their heads. They took a look at the AP and they're like, Purdue, didn't Purdue lose and yet they're rising in the polls? Like, what the hell's going on with Purdue here, Ralph?
Well, a lot of it is being who you had. Some of it is good losses. I guess, Florida State, I guess you can call a good loss, and Marquette on the road, okay, and Texas at home. But, one of the differences we talked about Ohio, they did get an 18-point win in, and Matt Harms was not there. Their 7'3" guy. He will be back this game, as I read up, knowing we're going to talk about it. But I'm going to go back to that magic number, Joe, we talked about of how many teams in Division I? 353. Purdue is 343 as far as tempo goes, and Butler is 341. So this game clearly will be the first team to 60 wins. I think we're going to see a total of 119, 118.
Yep.
But it's also not a game where there's times where I really do like betting the under with 2 slow tempo teams, but you have a fierce in-state rivalry. You're playing where the Pacers are, so you're playing in an NBA arena. You play this series every year where, last year they play here in this arena. Butler played Notre Dame, and it mixes up the Indiana schools, and they always have this doubleheader amongst the Indiana schools of Ball State, Butler, Purdue, Indiana, Notre Dame. I mean, off your head, you don't think there's that many good schools in Indiana.
Right.
Add in Indiana State, and all of a sudden you realize how much basketball they have there. So it's a big deal, this tournament is. And this is the kind of game where I could see a team being up or down by 5 or 6, and the other coach going to the foul attack where the clock stopped and you start making free throws, and you get into one of those situations with free throws, and under 120 is not going to last. So I lean Butler. I just think they're a legit top 20 team this year again. The way they play defense, we know Florida has struggled. They beat them though at home. We know Stanford's playing well. They beat them. They beat Missouri. They beat Minnesota. They've taken care of who they have. They don't have top 10 wins,
right,
but they got a lot of top 20 to 50 wins. And their only loss was on the road going to Baylor. Baylor, again, one of the slowest teams as well. That score, to put it in perspective, they lost 53-52 against Baylor, and Baylor made a big shot late to win that. So this is going to be a great game. A lot of guys don't like scores in the 50s, but when you have quality teams that the scores are in the 50s because of slow pace and good defense, I do enjoy watching those games.
Yeah, and it's the number, guys. Keep an eye on that when it gets released. Ralph's right. I don't know if it makes it to 120. I'll definitely go. I'll go under. It'll be interesting to see what that number opens up at. But Butler is one of those teams, guys. Those mid majors. You just don't sleep on them. I know it's Big Ten, but do not sleep on Butler, especially this year. kind of back in form. Are you buying Marcus Howard today, Marquette, and taking on? And if I'm not correct, are the Bisons pretty good on the defensive end this year here, Ralph, as North Dakota State taking on Marquette here? Marquette it's a 13-point spread. I'm shocked it's actually that low. But the total interests me, Ralph, here at 142. I don't know what Marcus Howard is doing, but I do know that it's not exactly like he's been lighting it up lately, and that 142 number might be a little bit high for a defensive team like North Dakota State.
Yeah, North Dakota State, decent defense, but, a lot of their low scores are their tempos. But they've played some upper tempo teams. And, we know East Tennessee, we talked about the SoCon, beating them by 10 at home was a good win. Their only challenges on the road is they went to Indiana State and lost, and they went to AM Corpus Christi and lost. That concerns me. You play those two games. They beat Corpus Christi, one of the worst teams, by 12 on the road, and then lost to Indiana State. Marquette, Howard was out for a few games, and they actually played better. They turned into a very assist-prone team. They were sharing the ball. So I think with him missing a couple games, I think the Golden Eagles helped themselves to learn that we don't absolutely need him to become a force. And, with that being said, I think North Dakota State's going to struggle playing tempo. Again, like we said with some teams, if you're the better team at home and you have a different pace of play than the opponent, you normally can control that pace of play. And I don't think North Dakota's offense can keep up with them. It's
interesting you mentioned that Marcus Howard. He struggled a little bit. He scored 51 back on against USC there back on the 29th of November, but he's just 13 of 41 from the field in his last 3 games here, Ralph. You talk about the slow play of the Bisons. Listen, if he doesn't score, if they can keep him under, let's say, 28, 30 points, the under's got a shot here with the pace of play of the Bisons.
Yeah, I can't argue with that because, it's that holiday rest. They scored at 93 against Grambling their last game, and they scored 73 against Kansas State. Well, Grambling, again, one of the worst teams that plays up tempo. So, going into the break, it depends on how the coach thinks. You don't have another game until 8 days. And, I circled this week last year and said there was just some unusual things happening. So I tend to stay away from totals the next couple days as we go into these long breaks because you watch games and there's some coaches that coach the same way. There's some coaches that say, okay, we're up big. Let's get our kids, we're not going to play again for 8 days. Let's get some young kids some work going into where the conference schedule is right around the corner.
How about Georgia? You buying Georgia over SMU? Possible money line play here? SMU's got what, 1 win versus a ranked team inside maybe the top 100 or 200 here. I mean, they got some. They don't have really any quality wins, but they've come against 3 losses against all teams that are going to be in the tournament. So. Georgia confounds me. So does their coach. I just don't. I feel like they should be better, but they never are.
Well, SMU, as you said, before they played Georgetown last Saturday and lost, they had the 353 easiest schedule.
There you go.
And their best opponent they played was UNLV, and they only beat them by 4 on the road. So they had played nobody. I mean, your top team you played is like almost 200. You have not played a top 200 team.
Right.
So, them going to Georgetown or hosting Georgetown, I did not fade them against that situation because Georgetown was coming off the suspensions and kicking their point guard off. And look what they did. They reeled off 2 straight wins after losing their point guard and became a better team. So you and I talked about that last week. So, Georgia still, to me,
Crean just kills me. I don't get them, man.
They were a 10-win team last year.
Right.
They won 10, 11, or 12 games. They were very fortunate to have Anthony Edwards stay home. He is a top 5 recruit that normally goes to Duke or Kentucky or Louisville. He stayed home, and he will be a top 5 NBA pick. So he has changed their fortunes a little bit. So, I would lean Georgia because now they have some scoring with Anthony Edwards.
Right.
But we've seen, the top. They've only beaten teams 199 or higher.
That's it. Yeah.
They beat Georgia Tech, but they didn't cover. Lose by 19 to Dayton, lose by 13 to Michigan State, lose by 20 to Arizona State. So they're not a good team, but they're a middle-of-the-road team that now has an elite player that can lead the team to wins against a lesser-ranked foe, which, someone that I have SMU in that category.
Yeah, like Georgia's playing down a notch and SMU's playing up a notch at home. This should be an easy win for Georgia, especially with Anthony Edwards. So it'll be definitely a game that I'm interested to see what he does because Tom Crean drives me absolutely crazy. All right, Ralph Michaels, WagerTalk.com, guys. That is where you want to go. Big weekend again in college hoops. You would be best served to make sure that you head over to WagerTalk.com tomorrow. Check out Ralph's page. He'll have his plays up, ready to rock and roll early in the morning. If he's got anything up there tonight, head over there right now. It's the Cal Sports page at WagerTalk.com. Of course, make sure you follow him also on Twitter. Tail him at Cal Sports LV. Ralph, good luck tonight, no matter what you're playing there. And, of course, over the weekend, we'll be back on Monday, get to recap it all, as it's going to be a huge weekend in the world of sports.
Hey, Joe, I just want to shoot out one game that it was close to I like today. It's not worthy of a best bet category because, again, it's not a game like a 3% play at Wager Talk or higher. But I do like Akron tonight. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Akron. They're going to Tulane. They're laying a couple baskets. They're coming off some big wins. Their only losses of the year were on the road at West Virginia and on the road at Louisville. They already beat Marshall on the road, so they can handle being in the road situation. And Tulane is another team that's played one of the weakest schedules. And this is the second toughest opponent they're facing this year. Mississippi State was the toughest. They lost to them by 14 in a decent game back in November. So I do like, we didn't talk about dogs. We didn't really talk about best bets, but I do want to throw the Akron play out there so they have something for tonight. I
think what Ron Hunter has done there for Tulane is actually pretty good. Did they not beat Utah earlier in the year, if I'm not mistaken? Was it Utah? We just talked about Middle Tennessee State. Like they've actually done pretty impressive stuff here.
Yeah, I count. Utah, I actually have Akron rated higher than Utah.
Yeah, well, they're a tough out. Yeah.
In my mind. But again, the Utah win all of a sudden looks better because Utah just beat BYU, a team we talked about, and beat Kentucky. But we know Kentucky's also a little overrated. So, it's all in that mix of who beat who and does that make them better. But, yes, clearly beating Utah was a good win for them.
Both these teams, by the way, going to be very interested to see. I believe it's the first round of the DC Holiday Hoops Fest tournament is what you got here for these guys. So it should be interesting. But both teams, both programs off to pretty good starts here this year. Ralph, good luck with the plays this weekend, man. We'll get to break them all down on Monday. Get to do it all over again, my friend. So good luck to you.
Joe, have a great weekend. Thanks.
You got it, guys. Good luck to you as well. Make sure you get over to WagerTalk.com today. Make it a profitable weekend.